Hello everybody, I'm Brian Esser from How to Automotive, and today I'm excited to do a review on the new Milwaukee Tools Stubby impacts that just came out. So they sent me to the new tool symposium a couple months ago, and I got to see these. These were the highlight of the show, by far the most buzz on it. So this particular model is the 3/8 model. In this video I'm going to do the demonstration on the 3/8, and other future videos I'll do the 1/2 inch and the 1/4 inch drive. But for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a major repair on this vehicle right here in front of me. So I'm going to do spark plugs, a radiator, timing belt, valve covers, cam seals, crank seals, and I'm going to try to use this solely to remove as many fasteners as I possibly can to show you guys what this tool can do, how this tool can be beneficial for you, and also show you some of the limitations that it may run across as we do this major job. So stay tuned for that. So before we put this tool to work, I thought I'd do a little unboxing, show you what you get for your money, go through some of the specs on it. So you can get these in bare tool or kit form. This is the kit form. The part number is 2554/22. Once you get it out of the box, it comes in this embroidered carrying bag. Inside is going to be the bare tool, a 2 amp hour battery, a 4 amp hour battery, and a charger. So when operating the tool, it has 4 separate modes that you can put it in. Just by pushing the button on top. The first setting is power level 1, which is 1200 RPMs. Power level number 2 is 1800 RPMs, and power level number 3 is 2700 RPMs. And the 4th level on the tool is the auto stop feature, meaning that you can run a fastener in, and as soon as it hits 10 pounds, it automatically stops. So now I'm going to show you those features in action. We're going to take this little stubby impact and we're going to disassemble this this large job that I'm doing here. Like I said, I'm doing spark plugs, timing belt, water pump, cam seal, crank seal, thermostat housing, valve cover gasket, so I have to pull off the intake manifold. So on the tool I have a 2-hour amp battery that's fully charged, and we're going to start disassembling this engine. So one of my first tasks was to remove the right front wheel on this vehicle. So I went ahead and used it to take off the lug nuts. It had no problem. The first thing I noticed, it had super smooth feeling. There was very little vibration in my hands, and it took the lug nuts off with no problem. So now I'm taking off some inner shields here. I got a 10mm socket on here, and it took these off, obviously no problem. Now we're back up top, and we're going to remove the some support brackets here for the radiator. This is a 12mm sockets that I'm using. Back underneath here, I was removing some of the skid plates and plastic shields. So it made quick work of all those type of tasks. I got the radiator out in no time. I took the air cleaner assembly out with no problem. Now I'm using it on the throttle body. I'm using it to take off these 12mm bolts on fasteners on the throttle body. And as you can see, the compact size allows me to get in there. Now I would classify this as a light to medium duty tool, which makes it perfect for disassembling engines. So now I'm taking off some 14mm nuts that are holding the intake manifold on. I got a little extension on it, and it took the 14mm nuts off with no problem, but the 2 center nuts on this are 8mm Allen sockets with the extension, and when I went to go take those off with the Allen socket, it didn't want to take it off with the extension. So it struggled a little bit. So what I did was I took the extension off, and then once I took the extension off, I tried it again, and it took the fasteners off. So using extensions with any impact tool will reduce or rob the amount of torque that it can produce. So every now and then you're going to come across a fastener that you need to crack free by hand first, and then use the tool to finish removing the bolt. Here I am using it to remove the valve cover bolts here, and it had no problem removing those. Pretty much any 10 and 12mm fasteners you run across, it's going to rip those right out with no problem. You get some of the bigger bolts, and you may have to loosen it up a little bit with a hand ratchet first. This is a 12-volt tool. It does have 250 foot-pounds of breakaway torque and also 250 foot-pounds of tightening torque on it, which is a lot for a 12-volt tool. So I just took out the ignition coil. Now I'm using it to remove the fasteners for the valve cover here, and there's about 8 or 9 bolts on this cover, and you can see how fast it was to rip these bolts out. So that's the name of the game, is speed, and this tool is definitely going to help you make more time. So in this clip here, I'm using it to remove some motor mounts. It has a couple 12mm bolts on it, which they took out those with no problem. But then when I switched over to the 14mm socket to remove the 14mm ones, it gave me a little bit of challenge on a couple of them. But these are extremely long bolts. Some of these bolts are really long. This particular one was short, but the next two are long. They're about about a foot long, and as the fasteners twist, they lose a lot of their torque in them. So it took a little bit of hammering on it, but it eventually did knock these bolts loose. So as you can see, this little stubby tool is helping me make quick work of this pretty large job here. I'm getting it tore down pretty fast. And this next clip is where it really shines though. So I'm taking it to loosen up this belt on this alternator here, and I'm sticking it down in this very confined area to loosen up the fastener. And it was easily fit in there, and it allowed me to get in there and loosen that up. Now back underneath the car, I'm in a confined area again, and I'm using it to loosen up the fastener for the power steering belt here. And having that small compact size allowed me to get in there. Now I'm trying to use it to take off the crank pulley on it, and I was hammering on it good. I even reversed it and tried to go back the other way, and it would not take the crank pulley bolt off. To be fair, I had to use the high torque on that to get that bolt off. Now I'm using it with a crank pulley puller to pull the crank pulley off, and it takes quite a bit of torque to pull these off, so I'm using it in forward mode, and it's pulled the crank pulley off with no problem. Now I'm going to switch it to mode 4 and demonstrate what that does for you. So mode 4, as you screw a fastener in, as soon as it hits 10 foot-pounds, it stops torquing and stops the tool. So I'm running this crank bolt back in because I wanted to use it to rotate the engine, but I don't want to tighten it up too tight. So as you can see, it ran in and stopped all by itself. That was the tool doing that. Now I was able to put a hand ratchet on this and rotate this engine around so I can line up the timing marks on it. So if I had ran that bolt in and slammed it in there, it could damage the end of the crank. So you don't want to do that. So that's where that mode comes in handy. So here I'm using it to try to remove the cam bolts on this particular car. And I was hammering on this, and it just did not want to come off. So the head of this bolt was 17 millimeter. It probably would have taken the mid torque or maybe even the high torque if you could fit it in there to get that fastener loose. So after hammering on it for quite a while, I had to switch over to a 1/2-inch ratchet and a pretty large wrench to crack this free. It took quite a bit of effort to crack that bolt free. So here I'm using it to remove the timing belt tensioner. I'm using quite a long extension here. It's about 18 inches long with a 12 millimeter socket, and sliding it up from underneath the frame here to get to the fasteners. And with these long extensions, it could rob a lot of torque, but it took these bolts out pretty much with no problem. So after taking the timing belt tensioner off, then I switched over and took off the timing belt roller there, the cam pulleys, and it had no problem removing these fasteners either. So my first impressions of the tool are very good. I thoroughly enjoyed using it. It did everything I asked for it to do, and everything that it couldn't do, it was because those fasteners were extremely tight or on there for a really long time. So as you can see, it helped me tear this engine down in no time flat. I made really good time with using this tool. Now I'm going to go back together, and I'm going to use power mode number 4 here to run these fasteners down on this valve cover here. And as you can see, I'm just running them down until it hits that 10-pound mark, which is pretty close to the actual spec of torque on these valve covers. So it ran down until it hit 10 foot-pounds and stopped on every one of the fasteners. So it just ran the fasteners down, stopped right at 10 foot-pounds. Then I went back over all these fasteners with a ratchet and torqued them down by hand. So that's pretty common when reassembling engines. You run them down until they're snug, and then you go back over the bolts with a torque wrench to torque them down to their final torque. So having that mode 4 on the stubby impact is a pretty cool feature that you'll probably use that a lot when you're reassembling engines. Here I'm using that mode 4 to tighten down the timing belt tensioner pulley here. So you definitely want to torque that to spec. So you just want to run it into it snug, and then you go back over it and torque it down. And here I'm using the mode 4 to run these coil pack bolts in. You don't want to smash those in. You could damage the coil pack. So mode 4 is a super handy, convenient thing to have, especially working with automotive use. It also has a variable trigger on it that allows you to use that trigger to fine tune the torque as you're going over these particular fasteners and tightening them down. But here I am using it in power mode 3, which is the most powerful mode, to tighten down these motor mount fasteners, and made quick work of that, and got these nice and tight. The longer you hammer on the trigger, the more torque it gets. So you have to hammer on it quite a while for it to get to that 250 foot-pounds of torque. So using this stubby impact, took this engine apart and put it back together with no problems at all. I even got to try it out on some brake jobs, and it made quick work of all these fasteners. I had no problems doing a brake job on it. I had no problems removing wheels. And I did this all on one battery charge. So all this work you see done is still the original battery charge. When I was done doing this brake job here, after I was finished with this, I still had 2 bars left on the fuel gauge. I'm Brian Esser from How To Automotive, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos. And if you're interested in helping the How To Automotive YouTube channel out, the best way you can do that is by purchasing t-shirts, stickers, and coffee mugs. I will leave links for that in the description of the video. So if you like this tool, I will leave links for it in the description of the video. That way you can pick it up for yourself. I'm Brian Esser from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again for watching.